Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of BCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and we are here today to talk about drones and delivery to supplies. What is happening in this world of drones? We've been talking about drones for a number of years, and more on the consumer side, a little bit on the enterprise side. We've seen a lot of application use in entertainment. We've seen a little bit of it in first responders. We've also seen teases of it around delivery. But when is this actually going to become something? What is really happening here? Where should we be paying attention to? Where should we also be looking at for the infrastructure as well? We've also seen some activity in the defense departments as well, as I've just been notified and reminded by our guests. Thank you, James, as well. So many different applications, but so many more to be had. But when are these going to be real? That's the questions we're going to be diving into, and also where are the areas of opportunity that you should be paying attention to as an investor and as a founder. Now, before we get started, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you're liking what you hear today, click that big red subscribe button down there in the corner. Also, if you'd like to be on a show like today, do reach out to the team and or myself, and we'd love to have you join our esteemed panel of investors and family offices, along with outstanding individuals from around the world, to talk about different industries, regions, and other topics as well. So do reach out, and we'd love to find the right set for you. Entrepreneurs, there is a virtual stage here for you at VCTV for you to get up on, pitch us as investors, and founders focus on your industry. We'd love to give you real-time feedback, along with building foundational relationships with each and every one of us and exposure to our live audience. Do reach out, and we'd love to find the right spot for you. Last but not least, a big thank you to the LA Token team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day on all devices to each and every one of you around the world. With that, let's go ahead and talk drones. Drones. But before we get into talking about drones and when I'm going to get my coffee delivered by a drone, thank you, Starbucks, I want to introduce our quick guest, James. Welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. A little intro, a little background.
Hey, good to see you, Gary and Kyle. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. So I'm James Haft. I'm the founder of Pal Capital. Pal Capital was formed in 1996 to focus on businesses that were going to benefit from the digitization of information. It's part of my 30-year career, which has been focused on emerging markets and blue ocean opportunities, with a real focus on bringing investment opportunities and the alpha people are looking for globally back to retail and institutional investors to create liquidity. Because my base belief is that liquidity is the most important aspect of any investment. If you can't sell it, it's of marginal value. In terms of drones, I've had a small VC fund called Pal Genesis for the last 7 years. It was formed actually when the accelerators were the hot topic. I was an advisor and a mentor at Techstars and at 500 Startups, and the founder of NXTP Labs in Latin America, which is the largest investment fund for early stage internet and digital businesses in Latin America, funded by the World Bank. And Pal Genesis invested on the theory that we found ideas and brought them to the accelerators, and then benefited from the activities of the accelerator, and also from the immediate jump in valuation. Back then, we were investing around $1 or $2 million in an idea or an early MVP, and when they would leave the accelerator, they'd be worth $4 to $5 million, and hopefully they'd go on. One of our investments in Pal Genesis was a company called Zipline, which has turned out to be one of the preeminent investments in the drone space. And as we go through the conversation later, I'll talk a little bit about why that investment's interesting and how it works in investment theory as well as in drones. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you, James, for joining. Gary, to you, welcome back. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Yeah, my name's Gary. Great to be here, Kyle. Great to see you again. My name's Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been doing startups for over 30 years. I love artificial intelligence and everything it's about and how it applies to areas like drones. So I'm an investor. I've had 3 funds. The latest fund, we're building a $100 million fund. It's an impact investment fund out of Atlanta, Georgia. I am the CEO and president of GSD Venture Studios, a premier AI venture studio that curates companies from all over the world that are artificial intelligence and helps them become unicorns. Some say we're unicorn hunters. Some say we're unicorn breeders. We're probably something in the middle. And that's it. So it doesn't matter where, when, or how. We're looking for those companies in all kinds of areas of the world. So I've done 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold for 1.35 billion. And I was a co-founder of Viva, YVA.ai, which is one of the top AI HR tech companies. And I was fortunate enough to be tied in with the most successful AI global entrepreneurs, David Yang. So that's my story. It's great to be here.
Love it. Welcome both, guys. So excited to have both of you here and to talk about such an important topic, as we've seen so much of the digitization over 2020, as we continually talk about here on VCTV. But drones is one of those things, and specifically around drone delivery, we've really been teased about for about 5 years. And I thought 2020 might actually bring that to us. And it looks like we might have to wait a few more years, and that's okay. And there are some reasons as to that. And we'd love to hear from each of you, your kind of view of what is drones and what is happening with drones and where this may all be going. So James, let's start with you, your current state of view of the drone industry.
Well, if you can stay awake from having heard this so many times from me, Kyle, you're a better man than me. I look at the world as fractal, so it all fits together. And if it doesn't fit together, then you're missing something on one end or the other. And so, right now we're talking about decentralization in the world, and we're talking about peer-to-peer, and we're talking about fractionalization. And the drones fit into that picture in a really simple, way, in just being the implementation of the will of the individuals or the systems that are acting now in a decentralized fashion. So if you think that we're all going to be represented and our businesses are going to be represented as avatars, and those avatars are going to be digital wallets, and those digital wallets are going to be managed by AI and algorithms. If you want to then be able to bridge that into the real world for, to have actual activities, then you need drones, right? Drones are just the logical extension of what's happening in the rest of the world. And so if that's going to impact you personally, that's going to impact how you entertain yourself, that's going to impact how things get delivered to you, that's going to impact warfare, it's going to impact society and education and all the other things that you're working on. And drones is such an interesting thing because it's broad. It doesn't mean one thing. It's not just the 4 propellered little device that you do in the backyard to see what's around you, but a drone could be something that serves something inside your house, but also could be an automated entity that does repetitive tasks for you, which as a function of the AI that you program and that you lend to it. My most significant interaction with drones in terms of investment perspective, from that perspective specifically, is Zipline. And if I could take a minute and tell the story of Zipline, I think it tells a lot of where drones are going. When I invested in Zipline, they were actually called Remotive. And Remotive made a toy called Romo the Robot. And Romo the Robot was a sled with 2 treads on it, like tank treads, that had a receiver on it to take your iPhone. And so the sled was actually dumb. It was a battery with servos in it and treads, but it actually had no intelligence. What they would do is take the intelligence out of your phone, and you plug your phone in, and all of a sudden you had connectivity, you had eyes, you had ears, you had a mouth, you had more processing power than the original NASA moonshot going around. And so this was 2011, 2012, and they showed it to me by plugging their Romo the Robot in, and told me to get to a computer in 2012, and they told me to go to a URL, and all of a sudden I saw their office in Seattle while I was in New York, and I was able to motor, Romo around and do teleconferencing with them while moving around their office as if it was me, and then they had made a little game that was like Pac-Man, so any room could be Pac-Man, and 2 Romos could run along the floor and eat power bites and do things and spin out and stop and have all kinds of things that happen in the game, and that was great. And so I invested and I advised them, and There's $2 million valuation when I invested in them. And they started to make the Romo the robot. Apple got excited. Apple sold 10,000 of them in the Apple store. So they had $20 million of revenues in their first year and a half. And the problem was, it was a toy. And so people would get one, like my kids had them, and they'd use them for a day, and then it would sit there, and that was it. It would just gather dust. So then they had to start to make software for the drone to make it interesting. So they started to make story-based content where people could play it on their own. And then it was boring to play on your own, so they started to get people playing with each other. So you could have your Romo, I could have my Romo, and through screens and everything else, you could start to interact, and it was kind of cool. And after 2 years, these guys who wanted to change the world with their robotics said, wait a minute, we're spending our days worrying about how to entertain 5-year-olds and worry that they're getting bored. So they said, that's not our view of the world. We don't want to do that. So they actually sold off that content, pivoted with almost no parachute, and decided that what they had actually created was the ability to break the barrier between one drone and one operator. And because previously a drone had an operator. And so they created the ability for the drones to work as a mesh and to deal with each other. And they took that and they made it so we'll have simple flying drones, and we'll have the drones be the system. And so that you can program the logistics of all the drones as one input being run by one computer and one operator. So they broke the barrier of one drone to one operator. So they brought that over to UPS and Amazon, and they went crazy that, wow, we could, change the world. Within a couple months after they raised $30 million at $100 million valuation, the FCC came in and said, wait a minute, you're going to have flying machines that are going to carry boxes and drop them on top of people inside of cities inside the United States. I don't think so. So they said, oh, oops, okay, understand that. So they said to themselves, what can we do that will be the first thing that the United States, that the government will allow us to do, like, as autonomous drones? And they said, well, I know, we'll save lives. Right. So they decided we're going to instead of just dropping boxes, we're going to find a way to bring urgent medical materials. We're going to find a way to bring urgent medical materials to individuals in remote places where they can't reach it otherwise, and we're going to save lives. And if we're saving lives, then the U.S. government's going to have to love us, before they love anybody else, when they decide that they do love anybody. And so they went to Zimbabwe, and they went to Rwanda, and they went to Brazil, and now they're in India, and they became, a unicorn delivering blood and bandages and antibiotics to remote. And the number one thing they do is help women in pregnancy, because in Africa, in the hinterlands during the rainy season, if you're a woman and giving birth, there's no blood, there's no antibiotics, and so they literally are saving hundreds of lives and being paid a significant amount per trip, and they're doing thousands of trips a month, and now it's so they turned into this urgent care, and it turned out that the drone itself is actually the least important part of the system. The drone, all it has to do is survive terrible weather, be reliable, and if it breaks, be modular so that you can swap things out really easily. But actually, the drone looks like a 12-foot wingspan airplane, like the balsa wood planes you used to spin the rubber band to get it to fly. Yeah. It wants to be as simple as possible. And all the intelligence, all the thing that's interesting in the drone is the logistics management, that a person can send a text message. The text message can be coded so that I know where it goes to. So I do the pick and pack, I place it on, you never touch the programming. The system knows this drone's going to this landing pad, and it can drop the piece on within 10 square feet, drop a package that has the urgent goods in any weather. And so it turned out that the drone itself was actually not the technological important piece. The software was the most important piece. And that's the journey.
Wow.
So now they're coming back to the United States, and now they're working with the military, et cetera. So
wow. Which is pretty wild and crazy. I mean, I remember days of I had the chance to visit DJI's facilities outside of Shenzhen, and it was crazy to see even what they were doing. And again, they're being used in many different applications, along with Matterports and a few others. But then to see and hear what you're talking about and what Zipline has put together it's fascinating to see the advancements, and it sounds like there's still some applications on the software side, and I want to get to that in a minute where we can really work to improve that infrastructure. But I mean, what you guys are doing and what you and the company have done, and congratulations to them and to you on that investment. That's pretty wild. Gary, to you. Thank you, James. Gary, to you, at current state, what are you seeing as things have morphed and evolved in the drone space as well?
Yeah, so I mean, look at it today. It was really interesting, Kyle. I went out to CES, and I happened to see the Nexus, the 6HX, which is Bell's version of the autonomous drone. It was unbelievable. 6 inducted fans. This thing, can you imagine the capability to carry passengers up to 6 passenger, another version, the smaller version that they were talking about for 2? But imagine having those kind of air taxis and that kind of capability. So, I mean, we're on the verge of something. So as James was saying, from medicine to food, retail packages to industrial materials, they're all being developed. Now, the interesting thing, I think you mentioned about China, China's already in the urban areas, they're using, drone delivery services, right? The challenges in the States is we're still in this test phase. And of course, you're trying to deal with the FAA. What is a plane? How does this thing, how do they know where that is? So, and the other challenge, quite frankly, in order to get approved, right, the amount of money that it costs to get approved for this type of a drone is $1 billion per platform estimated. $1 billion. So who's going to be able to do it? Boeing's going to be able to do it. All the big Airbus is going to be able to do it. But now you're starting to take the smaller companies out. Then, so you got the price, then the issues with liability coming into an area. What happens is you do have an Amazon drone, and for whatever reason, it has a trouble, it goes down and one of the blades hits somebody and hurts them. What happens then? So we've got those kind of issues. The good news is, we're moving forward with it. And one of the challenges, and again, how does that drone communicate with the FAA using the remote ID standards? How is that? What does it look like? And so now the drone suppliers are going into FAA. They need to come up with the strategy to be able to identify where they are, what they're doing, what kind of height, that kind of thing. So the beautiful thing about it, the drones that I've seen anyhow, the larger, I'm talking about VTOLs air taxis, are all electric, right? So this is a dawn of a new era. And, so I see the other part of it is we got another challenge. The challenge is, what about counter drone technology? So you got all these drones that could have nefarious purposes coming in. I know probably 3 years or 4 years ago, one landed in the White House and somebody had just made a mistake, was flying their drone. So now the situations, and primarily for military applications, swarming technologies, how do we respond against drones coming in that could be the size of a bumblebee, right? And have nefarious purposes. So it's going to be interesting to see how this market continues to grow and mature, and what kind of solutions are going to be out there. And as these more advanced AI-driven, as you know, I love AI, driven solutions for the counter drone industry, because now we got to think about how to defend against, right? It was one thing when we had predators and we're flying in, the desert wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's another thing if those things start flying across the ocean and we got to defend against them directly, right? And that could happen. And if you fly them low, they're hard to see. So it's interesting. The other side is, think about for agriculture, how much better that is for a farmer in terms of agriculture, being able to know exactly what's happened, especially large commercial farmers on their property at one point in time. Fires up in the valley, as you're well aware, and I'm well aware, the challenge with fires. I mean, it's dangerous to put somebody up in a plane or a helicopter if there's a lot of heat. Well, imagine having the drones, which are using today, in a more advanced fashion to be able to go out, not only to identify, to be able to respond and drop water or drop drop chemicals on it to put out the fire. So, and then being able to circle and to be able to chart all the time. So instead of waiting for it to happen, identify when it's happening. We have some technology we've developed that actually looks at the fire and not the smoke. So, once the smoke starts, you got a serious problem. But we actually look at the fire in the beginning of a fire hazard and to be able to put it out. So those kind of technology, I'm incredibly excited about it. I think we've been talking about drone travel. I mean, was it Mueller or Moeller actually was talking about those? You remember those? They had the 4 quadcopters. They were trying it many, many years ago, but now we finally got the technology that can level it out. And now we have the technology to make it autonomous. The key is, are we going to be open enough for regulations to allow it to happen? Are the lawyers and liability going to kill us?
And TBD. And James, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's very funny how you started and ended there, Gary, because you were talking about regulations. I look at, again, going back to fractals, the issue with drones is very similar to the issue with crypto, which is you have a bunch of people running around who have existing franchises, whether they're governments or bankers or lawyers, et cetera, who are continually arguing that the problem with crypto is that there's not enough regulation. And once we have more regulation, then it's all going to thrive. And kind of Gary made the same kind of allusion, or concept there in with regard to drones. And I think that the reality is probably the same for drones that it is for crypto, which is that the regulation is actually the problem. Right? There's no reason it should cost $1 billion to bring a platform into being, and the reason it does is completely artificial and depends upon people willing to continue to play the games that that you're playing right now with regulators. Now there is the aspect of drones that they're physical, and that you probably can do more physical damage with a drone than with crypto. I get that, although some people will claim that crimes against money are more important than crimes against property. It's certainly the Chinese would tell you that, as it's a capital crime to play with the currency in China. And so I look at the environment, and what I see is that everyone who has one of these quadcopters that has the amazing camera that can do all the stuff it can do, you're supposed to register with the FCC and with the FAA, et cetera. And all these, they come with manuals and instructions on how you're supposed to comply. I think maybe the compliance is 1%. If it's 1%, I'll fall off my bench, right? I don't know any kid that's called up the FAA and said, I'm about to take off, right? And so the reality is that are people going to actually pay attention to the regulation, or are we going to have this whack-a-mole thing where the government's chasing people around? Now, if you're trying to move people as part of Uber to have a fleet of 10,000 of these things that are, accessible and, and censorable, then I totally get it. But if you move in the other direction of the spectrum, which is the idea of having, democratized peer-to-peer, in small numbers, which are personalized, I think that the question, I think that's actually as big a growth opportunity as replacing Uber cars with taxis, which I also think is going to happen. So I'm not against that. But I think those are two different markets and two different aspects. Personally, I don't find passion in chasing the next Uber taxi technology. I'm more interested in the smaller end of the spectrum, and in the more democratized uses of the platforms. And I think that they'll be not necessarily bigger in any way. Certainly you have more chance of unicorns, if you're trying to get defense contractors or replace things in the military industrial complex, but on the other hand, I think you'll have individuals who are going to have ways that they want to play around with these things, and where they start to be more of a gray market. I think that the age of regulation is actually past. I think that we've already apexed, and I think one of the things that these new technologies are bringing around is a new paradigm for regulation is actually required. And I think the governments are still trying to hold on to their old methodologies. And I think drones are going to be interesting in that aspect, in that they're going to start, and AI is going to be interesting in that aspect, in that you're going to start to see that there's things happening that, that force us to change how we regulate and force us to change how we consider economic models.
And James, with that, just a quick question. I mean, where do you think blockchain may play a role in this industry? I mean, does blockchain have a place when it comes to the future of drones and its infrastructure?
So blockchain in its essence is just a database, right? And so it's a different, exciting database that offers a new set of tools and a different reality, but it's just a database. So absolutely, what blockchain is good at is democratized peer-to-peer, environments. And decentralized environments. And so absolutely, you're going to see blockchain as being interesting in enabling how the drones operate and how they interrelate with each other, and in terms of what you can do with it and what you can do with the data that's generated. So I do see all kinds of environments where blockchain will be interesting. But to me, blockchain is just the evolution of accounting. It's when double entry accounting came into the world and the Italians were really good at it, Venice became a banking center because they could value two different businesses and do a transaction in this new language, which enabled you to equate different businesses as if they were the same. And so DLT is going to do the same thing. Blockchain is going to do the same thing. It's going to enable us to now take data that's generated by agricultural drones and intermingle that with data that's generated by systems that are looking at meteorological information or at insect migration, and start to give you the ability to benefit from the transparency and open sharing of data. Rather than blockchain, I would talk about the trend towards who owns data and how does it get used, and how exciting is that going to be, providing inputs into AI that then drive drones and do stuff that you can't imagine, that you could lay off those brain cycles, that people don't need to focus on things because they can put into action their will in ways that can be related to future realities and then perform the actions as if the person wanted to optimize without having to focus on it.
You read my mind. That's exactly where I was going next with Gary, is where AI and data play a role in this as well. So Gary, James has just teed you up. Data.
I usually charge
AI.
extra for that, by the way.
You should. We'll compensate you on the flip side. But Gary, data, AI, where does that play a big impactful role in the future of drones?
Well, I mean, because communications between drones, swarming technologies. The drones can fly in a, I don't know if it would be considered a pack or a flock, I guess, a flock of drones. So those technologies, to be able to understand using computer vision and cameras for agriculture, it's going to be critically important. So relating what we have, how it's one thing to collect the data, it's another thing to get that data out. It's another thing to analyze that data and to act upon it. So we've got to, all the time. So it's collecting with the computer vision and the cameras, analyzing the data. And then in terms of flight, what kind of training sets do we have to be able to identify where we need to fly, how and why? The thing that's really interesting, Kyle, it's since 2016, June of 2016, JD, the large e-commerce company, I'm sure you know from Beijing, has been doing drone delivery from 2016, right? And, they're building drone launch facilities. And then at the same time, the drone growth is not in the US, right, or Europe. The drone growth is in Asia, right? It's incredible. So why is it so? Because of the regulatory changes. So look at where is it taking place? Indonesia and Australia. Followed by China, India, and Japan. So those places, we got to change the regulations. And we're in the States, we're so wrapped up about regulations that we forget about innovation and how we need to keep up with the rest of the world. And quite frankly, it's kind of sad, right? That we developed incredible technologies. And the largest drone company is, what is it called? The DJI? I forget the name.
Yeah,
DJI,
DJI. Yep.
is the largest drone company in the world. It's not a US company, right? So
Nope.
we've got a long way to go. We better go down through and, of course, AI has an incredible impact on this. I mean, it's not going to happen unless we've got, semi-supervised and then unsupervised AI. And we got to be careful that we're making the right decisions, because the last thing we want to do is have a passenger drone go up and crash into a building because they make a mistake in the flight patterns. So there's a lot to do. And unfortunately, liability holds us back in regulation. So I'm excited about it, excited about the AI piece, the across the board. So imagine drones that with AI can create a flock of drones to go over agriculture area or a fire. Imagine if we had drones right now today that go out in these massive fires and we don't have to risk life. And as soon as alarm goes off, they're in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but again, you're talking about regulation and and how we're dealing with it. This is again fractals. Like we're losing, we're losing our edge on so many different fronts
I
right now.
agree. I mean, the thing is, we're so wrapped up with liability, we forget about the future. And the thing is, there isn't going to be any liability to take care of if we don't get stuff moving forward, right? The history of America is about innovation, and we're losing our edge.
Well, Kyle's going to shoot me for bringing this up, but it all fits into the MAGA stuff, right? It all fits into Make America Great Again. We're so focused on ourselves and thinking that what, some people, I always told my kids that I'd rather know what I don't know than know what I know, right? Because if I know what I know, then I think I know everything. And if I know what I don't know, I have the wonder of the worlds around me as to wake up every morning and be fascinated. And the United States has gotten focused on being that we're the greatest and we know everything. And so we just have to manage what's here, because if we do that if we just keep everything under control here, we know everything, right?
Yeah.
And what's happened is the world is just racing by without us right now. And that's happening on drones, right? And that's happening on AI, and it's happening on our money supply, and it's happening on all these different ways. And I think that, bringing it back to drones and AI, these are just ways that using distributed ledger technology will be able to communicate information freely and then enact it globally without having physical nexus between us and the agent of ours or the avatar of ours that's actually doing the activity. And it's going to make it harder and harder to regulate and that's what's happening. Is it's not the technology that's driving change. It's, again, you've heard me say this, Kyle, it's human need that's driving the need for change, and the technology is providing the platform and the lubricants and the ability to then enact and act on those needs.
Right, and I agree, and Gary, back to your point around DJI and JD. I mean, this is part of the Alibaba online to offline O2O process that Jack Ma put into place, and that was the idea that you could start shopping online and finish shopping offline, but also really to focus on the greater supply chain and those customer needs or customer demands that James mentioned, is how to get product to the end user. Right, whether that be in that last mile area of taking a scooter, taking a bike, taking a drone, and getting whatever package you have from point A to point B or B to C as well. And gentlemen, I want to come to you both as we're coming to close to the top of the time to wrap here. Is where the opportunities are? Where are things lacking that need to be focused on? Whether that's capital being placed or building to be had around this future of drones, whether that's on the consumer side or the enterprise side. Where are the opportunities and gaps that people should be paying attention to over the next 10 years as they're looking to make those bets? James, let's start with you.
So again, I have a framework that I use for everything, which has to do with valuing people and community and habituation over money. And so I would look at those things which could impact the most people, that could be used by the most people, and habituated by the largest audiences. And so drones is really, really early. And the number of people that can be touched by drones is just astronomical. So the areas that are interesting are definitely, as Gary said, transportation without question, package delivery, logistics, those are obvious ones. But I think you're going to see more subtle opportunities and a redefinition of drones, just like my guys at Zipline went from Romo the robot to saving lives, so as being the concept around the drone. And I think you're going to start to see drones that are actually synthetic drones that are digitized. And I think the market for digitized avatars that perform activities for you that are in essence a drone of you or of one of your desires is going to be a huge market that's going to have much lower capital barriers for investment and going to spawn much more entrepreneurship than the larger opportunities which require billions of dollars and have the physical nexuses that are censorable by authorities. So I think you'll have a barbell kind of opportunity with the big industrial military concepts on one end, and on the other end, the ability to enact on a micro basis your individual desires, through algorithmically driven AI-powered, bots that are either physical or digital.
And Gary, to you, same question.
I mean, so from my perspective, areas that help, so delivery of medicine, situations where life is endangered, fires, those kind of initial, because I believe that it's going to be a lot easier from a regulation standpoint to get those approved. And of course, the military is going crazy all over the world with drones. So if you got some kind of interesting drone technology, they're willing to suck it up. Unfortunately, on the commercial side, it's going to be a bit harder. The other thing is, if I was a startup out there right now, listen, startups, what I would do is I would go to Boeing Ventures, I would go to Airbus Ventures, and I'd look at partner to them, because to them, the $1 billion is not that big a deal, and they're looking for incredible, innovative technologies to be able to compete. So if it was me, I would go into those kind of areas. And of course, agriculture, areas where you're not around a lot of folks. So agricultural areas where you can use drones to be able to do all kinds of different things, from surveillance to understanding what kind of situation of crops are in, being able to look at sensors, be able to relay that back to the farmer, so then they can actually send their automatic tractors out to be able to deliver some type of fertilizer, or to be able to cultivate the soil earlier than later. So I would look at that, how this system, this whole closed loop system works, and where drones can play a part of it. I think the large commercial farmers are great targets to go after. It was me, and I would take my technology to them. So it's a good time. And you're right, in terms of transportation, commercial, anyhow, it's going to be some time before that happens. But I saw it directly. I saw the Bell GSX Nexus, and it's beautiful.
Wonderful. And gentlemen, thank you both. Closing thoughts, and then of course, where can everyone find you online? James, let's start with you. Closing thoughts, anything else to add around the future of drone delivery? And then of course, where can everyone find you to continue the conversation?
No, again, I think that you should follow your passion. Find the things that you find interesting, find the problems that you have in a daily life, find the technologies and the concepts that you're willing to habituate into your life because they make your life better, and because you enjoy using them, and because you're naturally attracted to them. Assume that you're like other people and follow that as the area to invest in, because you'll have an unfair advantage in that you're willing to spend spare hours, even hours that you're not being compensated for, to learn more and give yourself the data background and immerse yourself in the network where you can learn more and get superior knowledge and have opportunities to invest. It's a modernization of the Peter Lynch Magellan concept of buy what you love to touch. So my name is James Haft. My company is Pal Capital. So it's palcapital.com. I'm on LinkedIn as James Haft, and I'm on every social media network on the face of the earth as JF Haft. And I'm always open to talk and learn and network.
Wonderful. Thank you. Gary, to you, closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so as I've said many times, AI is the new electricity. AI is going to be a substantial part of any type of a drone technology. Look at your AI technology. It can be used in all kinds of different ways, not just drones. The training sets are transportable. So I think that's a good place to start. This is a burgeoning opportunity. There's a reason why companies like Amazon are investing in it. So go to Amazon Ventures, places like that can help in funding. You can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn, Twitter. You can send me an email, gary@gsdvs.com. My company is GSD Venture Studios, gsdvs.com. Come in, take a look at the site. I'd be happy to talk to you. Get up and get them. You know, you never know until you try. One of the most famous entrepreneurs in the United States once told me, he said, Gary, let me tell you a little story. It's like flipping coins. He said, give me your coin. And he took the coin and he said, look at this coin. I said, yeah. He said, let me tell you, this is entrepreneurship. He said, now I'm going to flip it in the air. He said, what do you call it? I said, heads. He said, listen, if you wouldn't have tried, you got it, heads. You wouldn't have tried, you would have never known that you could have the success. If you try, at least you have some chance. Try.
Wow, that's two phenomenal individuals with great closing thoughts and advice for all of you today, audience. James, Gary, as always, a pleasure. Thank you both very much for your time today and all of your insights around this area of drone and drone delivery. To your audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Thank you, Gary. Do reach out if you'd like to be on a show to join James and Gary, along with myself and many others, investors here on VCTV. We'd love to have you, and entrepreneurs as well. Do reach out if you'd like to join the virtual stage and pitch us as investors in real time. Get great feedback, also build relationships, and get great exposure to our live audience. Please do reach out to James, Pal Capital, Gary at GSD Venture Studios, and do connect with both of them. Make sure you add context, when you do reach out. Let them know where you've met them, where you've heard from them, and why you want to continue the conversation as well. And a big thank you to Maria and to the entire LA Token team for making VCTV possible every single day. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We're going to take a quick break. Be back with more VCTV.